This is not something that men are really comfortable talking about, but the statistics bear out that about one in every seven men have zero friends. Zero. Not one, not two, no close friends.
Are you struggling today with mental health? Well, this episode can be really helpful for you. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Baika at Global Educators. We are here to talk about men's mental health. We have a speaker today to guide us through about the importance of mental health for men and what are the common challenges that men face. In 2020, Chris Morris experienced a life-changing encounter with God that transformed his struggle with mental health. After a suicide attempt, Chris heard God's radical message, "I still love you," which gave him the strength to rebuild his life. Today, Chris is an internationally known TEDx speaker, award-winning author, and ministry leader, helping others navigate mental health challenges through faith and therapeutic tools. Chris has authored three books on the intersection of faith and mental health, sharing his personal journey and spiritual insights. As a graduate of Northern Seminary, Chris is able to process deep theological concerns with creativity and faith. With humor and authenticity, Chris makes tough conversations easier, encouraging others on their own paths to heal and hope. Thank you, Chris, for coming today to speak with us about the importance of mental health for men, which I'm not sure if a lot of people talk about it, but November is dedicated to men's mental health. And there are a lot of podcasts out there. There are a lot of probably content out there that do talk about this, but I don't think there's never too much of talking about this particular topic. So thank you again for accepting my request and to, talk about and share your knowledge and wisdom. Please introduce yourself.
Everyone, I'm glad to be here. My name is Chris Morris. Becca did a great job of sort of giving my introduction, but I have been a certified mental health coach for about 5 or 6 years now, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk some about men's mental health.
Why is this topic important for you? What made you decide, like, okay, I need to talk about this?
Well, a lot of it is birthed in my own story. I have struggled with my own mental health my entire adult life. And for a lot of years, I thought that I was alone. I thought I was the only guy who was struggling with this. It was only as I started to talk more openly about it with friends and others that I realized this is a struggle that a lot of men have. So then it sort of brought this idea into my head of, hey, I should be communicating about this as often as I can because I need other men to know that they are not alone.
That's amazing that you want other people to not feel like they're going through it alone. If someone is going through these problems alone, remember that you're not alone, and we are all here to support what are some challenges that men face.
I think the number one challenge that is sort of ignored is the idea of loneliness. This is not something that men are really comfortable talking about, but the statistics bear out that about one in every seven men have zero friends. Zero. Not one, not two, no close friends. They have no one to process life with, no one to live life with. This leads to and is related to a variety of other mental health challenges. Depression and anxiety are on the rise in remarkable ways. The last statistic that I saw on that said something like 63% of people have experienced depression or anxious thoughts in the last 30 days. That's not just men, but 63% is a remarkable number. We live in a world where everything feels like it's sideways. And if we have no one to process it with and we don't have the tools to be able to process those things, then we're going to end up in a really bad spot. Then you add in the fact that something like 3/4 of all successful suicide attempts are completed by men. That has to do with the way that men choose typically to try to take their lives by suicide. Uh, it's just more, they're more effective ways, it's more dramatic ways that are going to be more successful. I hate to use the word successful. I don't know what other words you use though. Yeah, so those are some of the challenges.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to say I'm happy, but like I'm like grateful for you to like bring up these issues. And if you are feeling lonely, I would say like don't feel shamed about it because I feel like even females, I think a lot of people do feel loneliness and nobody wants to like, talk about it because I don't know why we all kind of hide it or feel bad about it. What do you think? Why do you think people feel guilty for feeling lonely?
Well, there's this idea, it's sort of different scripts, if you will, for men and women. For for men, the script sort of sounds like this. Well, you got to suck it up, be strong, power through, push through, and be a man. You don't want to show weakness because if you show weakness, then there's a problem for you. And for women, the script often sounds like, well, you don't want to be too extra. You don't want to be too problematic. You don't want to be too loud about the things that you might be struggling with. So there's societal scripting, there's norms for both men and women that really prevents us from getting to a place of transparency with one another. I'm convinced that interdependency and radical transparency with one another is the only way that we're going to get through the hard times that inevitably are going to come in our lives.
When we are being radically transparent, should we be careful with who we're opening up to?
Absolutely. Yes, I talk a lot about how to identify safe people because if we don't want to go from like, hi, my name is Chris to, hi, my name is Chris and I struggle with suicidality. How you doing today? Like that's just not reasonable. And then beyond that, we really run the risk of being gaslit or of someone not having the right mentality when it comes to trying to support us and help us. One of the key things that I think is really helpful is to look for people who have a tendency toward curiosity. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is this. When we start to interact with people, they ask open-ended questions. So we say, maybe a simple task would be someone says, "How you doing?" You go, "Oh, it's been a rough week." The person who has an attitude of curiosity towards you is going to say something like, "Well, tell me about that," or "What's made it rough?" "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on?" Where they're engaging in conversation in such a way where they're trying to open us up. The opposite of curiosity is often judgment or just ambivalence. So going back to that same conversation of how you doing? It's been a rough week. The person goes, "Oh, gotta go." Like that is not the person to try and be radically transparent with. We want to be radically transparent with the people who are showing interest in our lives. But there's always a risk, always.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So should people be willing to take a risk to be judged?
I think we have to.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I've learned over the last decade is this. We almost always have to be the person to take the first step. I wish that it wasn't that way. I wish that people would engage us in such a way when we're struggling, what they would just notice. Chris, it seems like you're a little off today. Is everything all right? That's just not the norm. We have to take the first step.
Do you think it has become more common in, I don't know about on your side of the world, but it has become in Asia as well. Have you noticed the decline of just checking up on each other? Do you think it has decreased in the past, maybe compared to past 20 years or so?
It sure seems that way, doesn't it? I remember even as a young adult, I had people who, so 20 years ago, I had people who were honestly interested and engaged in my life. And now everyone is just so darn busy and so self-centered and so oriented toward whatever their individual goals are. It's really hard to find and make space for others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we did kind of talk about the societal norms and the script, and I do want to go in a little bit deeper. What do you think, or how do you think these scripts were made? Do you think we're doing it unintentionally? Is social media playing a role? Who is creating these societal norms? And how can we, mitigate or slow them down?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been given a lot of thought to this, and I don't have a great answer to it. I think that, some part of it has to do with media. You think about what the perfect family looks like, and the perfect family, the man is the breadwinner and he's the strong one and he's always got it all together, and the woman is the one who is domestically oriented, and all the kids are always perfect and the house is perfectly clean. So it creates this idea that people don't struggle. And then social media sort of plays into that, plays that same chord, if you will. Because I mean, if you're gonna go on Instagram, you're not gonna see someone saying, "Today sucked. It was really hard, and I hope tomorrow is better." That's just not the story that we see. The person who's having a hard day is going to stay off of social media more often than not. So we have these false images that are put out there. And then we feel like we need to keep up with those false images in order to appear normal. And the reality is, the stats show most people are struggling, but nobody talks about it.
Do you think that a lot of people are scared to show their, vulnerable side on social media because of being judged?
I think fear of judgment is a huge component. About 6 months ago, I made a shift in the way that I interact on Instagram, which is my primary social media. And I've received a lot of not public comments. Most of the public comments are positive, but a lot of direct messages, a lot of DMs to me saying things like, you really shouldn't be talking about this stuff. I thought you were a better man than this. I'm embarrassed and ashamed that you're talking about these things. I get something like that almost every single day, and I just have to make a decision. Well, I guess that's not my audience. Unfollow me, bro. It's okay. But it's hard to make those choices.
Because I got that too. So most of when I go live on various platforms, and most of the time I try to, bring in a happy, bubbly personality. I don't talk about deep stuff, just so I can, keep my audience engaged. And then when I talk about deep stuff, my the numbers drop. My numbers
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like when I'm having fun, when I'm having like rap battles, or when I'm having talent shows, when I'm having comedy night, I get 100, 200 views. But like when I talk about deep stuff, I get 2 viewers, 3 viewers,
Yeah.
just 5. And I'm like, why are we shying away from these topics?
My guess is this: life is hard for most everyone. And in our downtime, we don't want to focus on the hard. We don't want to do the work that it'll require, to the investment that it'll take for us to get to a better place. We just want to be entertained. Same reason why reality TV shows, as terrible as most of those are, like the production value of most of those is just kind of garbage, or the ideas behind them are, ooh, great. Another singing show. How original. Um, they still get watched and they're still valued because people just want an escape.
Why do you think it's more prevalent for men, like loneliness? and isolation.
Yeah, I think part of that has to do with this. We did talk briefly about this idea of needing to be the strong one. So, unless you have like hunting buddies or something like that, where you can go and do something super manly together, that then there isn't a lot of opportunity to kind of to bond with other men because there's nothing to talk about. So you might have drinking buddies, you might have hunting buddies. You could, if you're into car, like classic cars, you could have a classic car buddy. But like there's no opportunity to talk about the real stuff that's happening in life. So what that creates, because I believe we're made for relationship with others and with God. And when we don't have those relationships, we feel a gap in our spirits and our soul, but we don't know what to do with it because it requires something we've never done before, which is being real.
What would your advice be to young people who are struggling to accept themselves?
I think for me, one of the core ways that I interact with people who are struggling is I talk with them about their true identity in God. Like Ephesians 2:10 says we are God's masterpiece. And God is the one who gets to decide whether we're a masterpiece or not. And that word masterpiece is a really profound word. Like, I don't know how often you get up, look in the mirror, and go, I'm a masterpiece. I don't. But yet, God looks at me and he says, you are a masterpiece. Or there are other verses there are other places in the Bible where it talks about we are we are beloved by God. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ. I look at passages like this and I sort of try and reorient people. Hey, the God who created you is the only one that gets to assign the value that you have. And I don't think that, it's really hard for me when I try and talk to people outside of faith spaces to engage with them in helpful ways around this. Because if you've had a life of trauma and a life of people beating you down, which sadly a lot of people have had, you can't positive think your way into a better headspace. You just can't. I think it requires something divine and something to interrupt those thought processes.
What are just like small, simple ways educators, teachers, because we get to see these students every day.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind with that is, sort of coaching, if you have opportunity, sort of coaching around cognitive reframing. Like if you notice someone saying something negative about themselves, just say, well, let's talk about that for a little bit. They say, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm doing so I did bad on this test because I'm a dummy. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. The last test you didn't do so bad on. So this is just an area that you're struggling with. Let's pull you out of saying you are dumb and push you into you are struggling with this topic. And there are topics that everyone is going to struggle with. So sort of doing some cognitive reframing when people when young men, when boys want to take on the identity of the struggle they're currently experiencing, and then reminding them of some of their previous successes. Because when we're feeling really poorly about ourselves, we don't remember a single thing that we've ever done right.
Speaking of a little bit like for older men who are listening, um, for men who are probably like already a breadwinner or a dad, they have the societal pressure of, providing, doing this and that. You have to be masculine. So I've heard this word quite often, and I know it's taken out of context and it has become a little toxic, unhealthy. Could you tell us about, the healthy masculine energy and the unhealthy side.
Yeah, I think that unhealthy masculinity says, I've got this. I don't need help. I can handle this. I'm good. I'm strong every day, all the time. And healthy masculinity says, I'm doing the best that I can. Some days are better than others. And there are days where I really need help. Sort of walking against those societal scripts that we were talking about earlier, which is really hard to do. I think that part of healthy masculinity is having good friendships with other men or women that will allow you in safe ways to be able to be honest when you are struggling and will provide support to help you make the changes that you need to make so that you don't stay in this place of struggling.
This could be, I don't know if this is a stigma in over there, but in Asia, there is a stigma towards like men. Men are more social. Men have more friends. Men are happier than females. And sometimes, quite frankly, it's not, it's the opposite. What do you think? Do you think it's true that men are happier because they are more social, or because they have more friends, or they can network better than females?
No, I think men just have a better mask. I think that, at least according to some of the stats that I looked up not too long ago, they're, if anything, men are typically in worse shape globally when it comes to their mental health than women are. Happiness is a weird thing because happiness is, we could look at that as sort of a temporary emotion, whereas a mental well-being is sort of an overall general like vibe or direction. So maybe there's more moments of happiness for men, but the general vibe is really downward trending and in a steeper downward curve for men than it is for women.
What are some other stigmas or misconceptions about men?
Well, something that comes to mind is this idea. This applies to men and to women, but the idea that every thought that pops into our head, we need to take ownership of, grab hold of, and believe it as truth. And that can really lead us down some dark paths. Let me give like a great example of how this might happen in a man or even a woman's life. Let's say around 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, your boss comes to you and says, Hey, we need to talk about something on Monday. I don't have time to address it right now, but on Monday morning, come see me first thing. First of all, no boss should ever do that because that's going to ruin your weekend. But the way it's going to ruin your weekend is really specific. The thought process is going to be something like this. My boss wants to talk to me on Monday. Therefore, I must have done something wrong. Since I've done something wrong, therefore, I'm probably going to lose my job. Since I'm going to lose my job, therefore, I'm not going to be able to find a new job. But I'm exaggerating this a little bit, of course. Since I'm not going to be able to find a new job, I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. Since I'm not going to be able to provide for my family, I'm going to lose my house. Since I'm going to lose my house, I might end up homeless. So, in the course of about 38 seconds, you go from your boss wants to talk to you about something, you don't know what, to you're homeless. That's called catastrophizing, which is a fancy word for exactly what it sounds like, making a catastrophe out of a potential reality. And I've identified some questions that we can ask ourselves to sort of pull back from that catastrophizing. The first question is, and this might be the most important question, is this thing that I'm worried about necessarily true? So if we back up all the way to that first question, since my boss wants to talk to me about something on Monday, I must be in trouble. Is it necessarily true that you're in trouble? No. So then the next question, what else could also be true instead of what you're worried about? Using the same example, Maybe your boss wants to give you a raise. Maybe you missed kind of an impromptu meeting and something was decided and he needs to communicate it to you. Maybe there's some other scenario between two coworkers that your boss wants to get your perspective on. There's three ideas just off the top of my head that have nothing to do with you losing your job. And then the third question is, what, if anything, should I do to prepare for these potentialities? And we have to be careful here because that could jump us right down another rabbit hole. So I want to think, what one or two things should I do to prepare for this? A lot of times the answer is nothing. We don't have to do anything. And then the fourth question, this is another really important question. What might God be doing in this moment? My experience has been a lot of times God isn't, if we ask that question of God, God, what are you doing in this moment? He's not going to say, give us an answer that connects necessarily with the way we're thinking that we'd like it to connect. But he might say something like, I'm trying to teach you peace. I want to remind you that I'm for you, that I'm with you, that I'm on your side. So those four questions, when we bring them together in the context of catastrophizing, which more people do than want to admit, can really help sort of bring down the level of panic that we're internally feeling.
Thank you for those questions. And I think a lot of people, and a lot of people can benefit from those and try it at home. If you let us know if it works. Do you have any other solutions, remedies for people that are struggling with depression, loneliness, isolation?
We sort of already mentioned, I think the big thing is if you're feeling that way, most of us, not all of us, but most of us have at least one person where we think to ourselves, I bet I could be friends with that person, and it just hasn't worked out. So take a risk and find some time to have like a low key engagement with that person where it is, just go grab a cup of coffee on the weekend or something. Go grab a drink after work and just hang out with them because we're never going to go from zero to intimate in 10 seconds. But we can make progress toward that. So I would encourage those who are feeling lonely or isolated, think about that person that you feel like you have things in common with and reach out to them in a low key way and just see if they would be interested in hanging out and see where it goes. Even if nothing, quote, significant happens in that conversation, if you're going out and you're hanging out with someone, even that can bring a little bit of a lightening of the load.
What if they ghost
Yeah,
you? What is a
ghosting sucks.
mental resilience
Yeah.
that we need? Yeah, especially boys, men need. How can they overcome being ghosted?
I think we just have to pick ourselves up and try again. It is hard. I've been ghosted a bunch of times, and you know, you just have to hold on to this core fundamental belief that says, I am not meant to live this life alone, and I'm going to do what I can to make sure that doesn't happen. The other thing I would say is sometimes people ghost because of unintended or unforeseen circumstances that have nothing to do with you. Maybe their dog got sick or broke their leg, and they're so worried about their dog, they forgot to even reach out to you and let you know. I know that's sort of a silly example, but my dog Freckles, if something happened to Freckles, I'd probably bail on my friend. I'm just being honest.
What is your one last message, Chris Morris?
I think I would just want to say that I want to remind everyone that you are genuinely, deeply, wholeheartedly loved by God, and that no mental health struggle, no issue that you're having, no worries that you're dealing with are going to disqualify you from being loved by the creator of the universe.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sending the questions and comments. And I'll see you in my next video. This is a men's mental health episode. Thank you, Mr. Chris.